The file came to me flagged as an equipment fault. That is the standard notation when a dosimeter returns readings outside the expected biological range. It does not mean the readings are wrong. It means they fall outside every range our instruments were designed to encounter, which, in 11 years of post-incident reviews at the Vithari Radiation Safety Institute, had always meant the instrument was malfunctioning, until it didn't. My name is Varath Solankas. I hold the rank of Senior Review Specialist at the Institute's Incident Assessment Division, Secondary Campus, Karath Station. I have reviewed 437 post-exposure files across 62 species. I know what radiation does to biological tissue at acute doses. I know the cascade sequence, the point where cellular repair mechanisms saturate, where output falls below the rate of damage accumulation, where the organism begins to fail faster than it can compensate. The sequence is universal. We have never encountered an exception. I say that so you understand what the file told me, and why my first action was to request a calibration check on the dosimeter in question. The check came back clean. The survey station on Palin Reach Secondary had suffered a pressure seal failure in its lower processing corridor on day 1 of what was designated Survey Rotation 11. The station's shielding grid collapsed inward. The resulting structural damage trapped the lower corridor under approximately 4 meters of compacted aggregate and fractured support plating. Standard radiation modeling placed sustained exposure in that environment at between 12.4 and 14.8 gray per day, far above the acute lethal threshold for every species in the Continuance Joint Registry, which lists a surviving sample of 419 catalogued organisms. 3 Vithari survey technicians who had been in adjacent corridors died of acute exposure syndrome within 72 hours, despite partial shielding from the secondary partition walls and prompt extraction by the emergency response team. The human was in the lower corridor. She was recovered on day 11, alive, ambulatory. She walked out of the rescue aperture carrying 2 collection satchels and an instrument case. The dosimeter clipped to her suit, which had been running continuously, returned a total accumulated dose of 151 gray over 264 hours. 151 gray. The standard notation is equipment fault. I requested the suit's secondary biometric log. It had been running in parallel, independent of the dosimeter, recording core temperature, cardiac rhythm, cellular repair index, oxygenation, neural coherence, and metabolic rate in 4-hour intervals throughout the 11 days. The log was intact. I sat with it for a long time before I called Senior Archivist Privith San. The cellular repair index is a real-time measure of the ratio between cellular damage accumulation and active biological repair output. In all cataloged species, this index follows a predictable curve under acute radiation exposure. In the first hours, the repair index rises. The organism's biology recognizes the damage and mobilizes. This is normal. By hour 6 to 8, depending on species, the index begins to plateau. By hour 12 to 18, for doses in the range the lower corridor was producing, the index collapses, repair output cannot keep pace. The cascade begins. The organism enters systemic failure. The Vithari technicians' post-mortem biometric reconstructions showed exactly this. Plateau by hour 7, collapse by hour 14, death on day 3. The human cellular repair index rose in the first 4 hours. Standard onset response, exactly as expected. It did not plateau. At hour 8, it was still climbing. At hour 12, it was still climbing. At hour 24, 1 full day into an exposure level that should have been producing cascade failure, her repair index had not reached a ceiling. It was still rising. I ran the cross-species comparison model. For a 151 gray total exposure over 11 days, the model expects Acute radiation syndrome onset by hour 6, irreversible cascade failure by hour 18, biological death by hour 60 at the absolute outer boundary, accounting for maximum observed biological resilience across all 419 cataloged species. The model runs to hour 60 because that is the farthest boundary any cataloged organism has survived. Beyond that point, the projection columns are empty. They were never filled in because no data existed to fill them. The model does not contain a projection column for day 11 ambulatory survival. The column does not exist because the value has never been needed. Her repair index ran for 264 hours. I want to be precise about what that means, because I found myself imprecise the first time I tried to explain it to Privith-san. It does not mean her cells were unaffected. The biometric log shows clear damage accumulation throughout, elevated inflammatory markers, degraded peripheral nerve response, suppressed secondary immune signaling, reduced metabolic efficiency beginning around day 6. Her biology was under sustained assault for 11 days. It knew it. The repair index was not flat because nothing was wrong. The repair index was high because something was wrong, and her cellular architecture was compensating for it, continuously, without pause, without ceiling for 11 days straight. She was not immune to the radiation. She was simply repairing faster than it could kill her. I have spent considerable time with the xenobiology literature since writing this report, and the closest framework I have found is the concept of a biological equilibrium. A state where an organism's repair output matches or exceeds incoming damage, not because the damage is absent, but because the repair mechanism is fast enough and durable enough to sustain the balance indefinitely. We have theoretical models for this. We have never observed it in a living organism at acute radiation doses. The theoretical literature treats it as a mathematical curiosity. The human sustained it for 11 days. The debrief was conducted on day 14, after she had spent 3 days in the station's recovery bay. The attending physician described her physical presentation as consistent with moderate radiation exposure and significant nutritional depletion. She had been surviving on 2 days' worth of compressed rations stretched across 11. He noted some peripheral nerve sensitivity reduction in her extremities, mild dermal inflammation, and what he called the sort of fatigue that gets into the bones. He cleared her for interview. I conducted it myself. Her name was Survey Operator Calloway, mid-40s, civilian science track, 4 rotations at Palin Reach. She answered my questions with the directness of someone who has been through a long ordeal and has had enough time to settle it inside herself. I had reviewed her service record before the interview. She had a reputation as methodical, precise, and difficult to rattle. The record did not seem like an exaggeration. I asked her to walk me through the 11 days, and she did the collapse, the blocked access to the upper corridor, the inventory of what she had available, the decision to keep working because stopping did not seem useful. What was the work? I asked. Core samples, she said. I had the collection case and the lower corridor substrata were still accessible. I'd been wanting to run a full-depth sequence on that section for 2 rotations, and I finally had the time. She had continued collecting survey data for 11 days, under 151 gray. I asked her how she felt during that period. She thought about it with the careful honesty of someone who takes questions seriously. Tired, she said. Genuinely tired by day 4 or so, a bit off. My hands weren't cooperating the way they usually do toward the end. I thought it was the rations running short. She paused. I didn't know about the shielding collapse until you told me just now. She had not known the radiation levels she was operating in. I asked her how she would rate her own condition during the 11 days. Reduced, she said, but acceptable. I kept working. I asked her when the next survey rotation at Palin Reach Secondary was scheduled. She said she wanted to be on it. I filed the correction notice the following morning. The dosimeter had not malfunctioned. The readings were accurate. I recommended a new classification entry in the Continuance Exposure Registry for human cellular repair behavior under sustained acute radiation conditions, noted as threshold not located within assessment window, equilibrium state sustained for 11 days at 151 gray total accumulated dose, upper limit of duration not established. I noted further that the assessment window was defined by the rescue timeline, not by any biological limit the subject herself appeared to have reached. Senior Archivist Privith San read the draft twice. She approved it without comment and submitted it to the Registry Board for authorization. The board has not yet acted on it. This is, I understand, a process. I have left a note in the file margin, which is perhaps not standard practice, but which I believe is accurate. It reads, the dosimeter was functioning. We simply had not built the scale for what she was doing inside that corridor. I suspect we still haven't,